Hello everyone, I'm Connie here at Red Pine Quilt Shop in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. Glad you could join me today. Detroit Lakes is being invaded by trolls. If you haven't heard, the recycle artist Thomas Dambo has visited Detroit Lakes and he's put in 6 trolls. Let me show you the type of things that happen. Oh, I missed a page here. Large trolls. Here's another one. These are placed out in the country. There's paths to take and there's a story that goes with them, so it's a bit of a mystery to find them. These trolls were made possible by a project 412. It's an organization here in town. Now, Thomas Dambo, this is his picture. He's a recycle artist from Denmark. And he's made these trolls around the world and in many places throughout the United States. His idea is we're drowning in trash and there's so much that we could be using and making something out of the trash. So that's where I'm coming from today, is what can we upcycle? The Minnesota Quilt Show recently had their big show, and one of the new categories was Upcycle. So this was a category where people made quilts out of recycled found fabrics, hankies, things like that. I'm sure all of you have thought of using your scraps as kind of a recycling project, or maybe t-shirts. Take a look at this book, Scrap Incorporated, and it was compiled by Suzanne Woods. She has 15 different designers that each make a quilt, give you some tips on storing your scraps, and also how to use them. So let's take a look here. This is Autumn Flight, and it's by Beth Vassalo. Now these flying geese, she has an improv way to put them together, so you're always going to have those sharp points. I thought, wouldn't this be great with some men's shirts? I could see that happening. Here's another picture of the quilt flatter. Designer Amy Smart. Her tip on your scraps is to just keep the ones that inspire you. Every once in a while, go through your scrap box or bag or whatever you keep it in and get rid of the ones that you just don't care about anymore. If you're not inspired, purge them, pass them on. Remember, one person's trash is another person's treasure. Katie Spencer uses strips. And in this quilt, she has used strips that she collects, and all the strips, the 2.5-inch strips, she puts into a special spot because then she can use that for a scrappy binding. Lots of great tips in this book and fun patterns. I tried this strip one because I have lots of strips around and got started here. I think what I'm going to do going forward is when I have some leftover fabric, I'm going to cut it in strips, put them in a bag or a box, and then when I have some spare time, sew these blocks. I recently found a lot of low volume fabric and then some Tula Pink and Amy Butler fabric, and I sewed these scraps together into large blocks. So I'm sure all of you have been doing scrappy quilts. I think that's recycling. Another book that I have to show with you, it's Beyond the Tea. And this is Mary and Jen Cannizzaro. So we've all seen t-shirt quilts. This book in particular gives you some different ways to put it together, some unique patterns, and they also encourage you to use clothing and ties. Let me show you a couple of the things. This quilt, each star is made from a different piece of clothing. I could imagine taking some children's clothing and cutting up and making a really fun quilt, or someone's shirts. Another one that I see, she uses ties. Now this is all made from ties. She also encourages you to take the little labels off and incorporate them in your quilt. Lots of great tips here in this book. Unusual ways to put together t-shirts, but also use other fabrics. I brought a couple ties with me today. Wouldn't these ties look great together? When I took one apart, I was very surprised at how much fabric there actually is. Lots of fabric, interesting patterns and colors. Now, it's quite thin. I think I'd need to put an interfacing on this. So ties are another thing that you might be able to use. Well, what else could you use? Here are some of the things that I've used in quilts. Salvages. I've made quite a few salvage quilts, and often this is just something that people usually cut off and throw away. Recently, I've been collecting denim and cutting apart jeans. Sometimes I leave the pocket in it. Old clothing. These were some shorts that were wearing out, so I made it into a little outfit, overalls. I really liked how I could put the pocket on the bib. This was a winter coat that had spots and stains on it. Cut it up and was even able to use the lining on the inside for an American Girl size quilt. So there's lots of things you can do. Sometimes they become heirlooms. This was the fur coat of my mother-in-law. My sister-in-law had 3 of them made, one for each of the grandchildren. Just love this. Look at that, the head even turns. So there are so many things that you can do with your leftover upcycled fabrics. Let me show you a couple of other things. An outfit and jeans. I loved leaving the pocket. I thought it was fun to leave the buttons and the zipper on it. So it's a little bag. I mentioned to you that there were some hankies made into a quilt. Well, I don't have hankies, but I do have embroidered dish towels. And wouldn't this be nice as a block? Put it inside a star or some other block and make a quilt out of them. Now I'm going to show my age. This was a dress I made for myself when I was in high school. All that elastic. But can't you imagine this as like a pillow or on a tote? I think I could take the sleeve and maybe sew a bottom, shear this up a little bit. It would be like a little pouch. Or I could make a dress for a doll out of it. Another thing that I have, old sweaters, which accidentally or on purpose have been shrunken. So this one had some holes in it. I took it apart and I purposely put it through the washer and dryer. I think I could make a tote bag. I could make mittens out of it. Could probably make some sort of a little bucket that could be used to put a plant in it. There's all sorts of things you probably have in your closet or in your basement that you could be using, upcycling, and making something new and functional out of it. A few considerations. If you're using t-shirts or something that's stretchy or very thin like ties, you probably want to put some sort of an interfacing on it. It's just going to keep it a little more square, make it easier to work with. The other thing, with these different fabrics, you probably need to adjust what needle you're using. Now, definitely when I was sewing the denim, I had to go with a jean needle. That's a lot of weight and thickness there. If I was sewing the ties or t-shirts, I'd probably want something that works with stretch fabrics. So adjust that. Another aspect is that with the thicker fabrics, you probably should be aware of using a scant 1/4 inch seam. As you press that, the fabric weight and thickness is going to kind of make that seam a little bigger, the seam allowance a little bigger, and it would change the size of your blocks if you're cutting precisely. So those are just a few things. The main thing I forgot to mention first, are you going to be washing what you make? And if you are, take your fabric, throw it in the washer, put it through the dryer, and see if it holds up. You don't want to find out that it's going to fall apart after you've made your piece. Maybe it's something that's going to just hang on a wall or a decorative pillow. Then you're not going to care so much if it can be washed. Well, I hope that you can find some things that you maybe were going to throw away and find a new use for them. Have some fun. Be creative. You might make a family heirloom, or at best you're going to have some fun. So if you can, check out the Trolls, Thomas Dambo's Trolls here in Detroit Lakes. And again, they were brought by Project 412, which is doing a lot of other really exciting things here in town too. Thanks so much for joining me. Goodbye.